Hi, and welcome to the SaaSOps Show. We have a very special security and compliance themed episode for you today. Justine and I are joined by our colleague on the security team, Ife. Ife, could you share a little something about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Ife Davis, Security Compliance Manager. I have been with Better Cloud for about a year. It's been an interesting ride, and working with you guys is great. So I'm excited about this show.
We're so happy to have you here. We started around the same time, so I feel like Ife and I have a very special bond.
Indeed.
And the time before that was just very dark for me.
Yeah, I mean, we have a very close relationship with the security team here at Better Cloud. We work very closely together. We report to the same person. And honestly, it's great because we have a very friendly relationship instead of at other orgs that I've been at. Sometimes it can be a little bit of a combative relationship between security and IT. Ife, what kind of benefits have you found from having such a close relationship with IT?
Yeah, so same as you, right, Justine? When I've been at other companies, they've been separate and very contentious at times, right? So coming here and us almost having the same start date, right? It was like we started learning together. So we onboarded kind of like at the same time, trying to figure out the ins and outs of the companies at the same time, finding some pain points at the same time. And I think that's what made it really great, is that we were a part of the same team, a different purview, but still the same goal, right? So us working together as a team made it better because I didn't have to run down anyone. We already knew each other. We are very fortunate to have a really great team that works well together and learns from each other.
The cliched idea of like security is like saying no and IT is like, I don't know, probably also saying no, but to different things. Like, it's like working towards a different goal. It really doesn't seem to be true here. The focus was on the end user experience.
Yes.
In a way that I feel like isn't that common elsewhere. And so our end users being our employees and also our customers, but like focusing on that experience first and like making sure that experience is had securely, I guess.
Yeah. And it was like you said about the end user. We talk about it and how do we make it as easy as possible, but also secure from our side, right? So we've been through a lot of that journey over the past year or so, and it's been like amazing because everybody on the team is very inquisitive. They want to understand from both sides. Okay, you need secure passwords and we're going to use this tool, right? Okay, that works. And we just do it really well. Most people should do what we do. Make it better.
I agree. Learn from us.
We'll be offering the masterclass edition of
Yes.
security and IT working together.
Yes, best practices.
Interesting to see the shift to our forced work from home situation as well, because while we always considered people's homes and wherever they're working part of our like risk and threat scope, it has sort of still widened further because people are just in those locations for longer now. And the line between your work and your personal life has blended so much more because you're just in the same space. So it's been kind of interesting to see how our users have adapted to that and what kind of new issues we've seen come up because of it.
Yeah, it's been an interesting environment. Like we literally blinked overnight and you had to really start thinking about what does security mean, right? So from a corporate perspective, we had our VPNs and our firewalls. We were all set. We even know how you got in and out of the door, right? From a physical security. And now it's take your laptop or your mobile phone and go home, right? And so we really had to start thinking about it. And this really goes to another example of how IT and security worked well together. So from the security side, phishing emails, don't click the link is what we say, but phishing emails went wild. Like some report just said they were up 600% since March of this year. Wow. And that is like incredible, right? And sadly enough, people are using, click here for your COVID test or get your results. And you're like, criminals will do anything to really breach a system. And your users are your end users are your number one threat to a company. So we really had to start paying attention to how we use the tools, right? That was one. And what you guys also know is outbound emails. How do we make sure we watch what's going out and who's sending what? And then finally, everybody has virtual meetings, right? So how do you secure that? Because you hear about all of these, people photobombing your meetings and all kind of things. So this is where IT came in handy. You're like, here's a new problem. Go run and get it. So Brian, tell us, what did you do with it all?
Probably one of the biggest benefits of IT and security working together is how quick we can pivot to accomplish these challenges. Because there's like the identifying the threat part and then implementing a solution. And the solution a lot of times involves us in terms of what software we provide or what settings we configure. And so that was big. I mean, the second part is we use Better Cloud for a lot of that stuff. And there's a lot of emphasis placed on being next to that other person. So if you get a phishing email from our CEO or allegedly from our CEO, a lot of times he might be sitting on the floor down 15 feet away from you. And you could even ask him, hey, did you send me this? Did you tell me to wire $50,000 to your personal bank account immediately with no questions asked? Did you? I don't think you did, but I can ask you. Some of that may be imagined security, because the reality is people travel, you may think that somebody's right there. I don't know, it's the illusion of it. But so relying on data and alerts from all of these applications, when we rely more heavily on SaaS apps as we work remotely, and we rely more heavily on communication apps like Zoom and Slack and Hangouts and email and all that stuff, you need alerting. And so we have alerts set up in Better Cloud to tell us when suspicious events happen, like people log in from unusual IP addresses that they don't normally log into, or new geographic locations, or on a different computer, or they're logging in. There's a cool one. It's like they logged in New York, and 30 seconds later they log in San Francisco. That's not possible, right? In a world that I live in right now, maybe someday. So we utilize that type of alert to hopefully get ahead of those threats before they grow. And in doing so, we pipe a lot of those alerts into Slack. We share joint Slack channels where we can action those alerts like really quickly, rather than back and forth with emails.
And I'll add on to that by just like mentioning that we have our weekly meeting for IT and security, but we do have multiple channels that we share with each other. So it's really valuable to have so many eyes looking at these different alerts that are coming through, because I might be in a meeting, I might miss something, but then, Matt on the security team sees something and he can track down with that person to find out what happened. So it's really like a great kind of like collaborative effort.
Yeah, and nice shout out to our SecOps guy who has eyes on everything. So endpoint security is huge, kind of watching what people are doing. So shout out to Matt on the team.
Along with all of this work from home stuff and all this craziness that's happening in the world right now, but we're also preparing for our ISO certification next year, which has its own laundry list of things that we need to accomplish for it. And Aoife has been running that project for us. Aoife, do you feel like our work from home situation has changed how you're approaching this at all? Or are you kind of going by the same, plan that you would have if we were still in the office?
Yeah, that's a great question too. So the ISO certification being a huge certification to go with, right? So people have the SOC 2, and when you do a SOC 2, you don't get certified at the end, right? So it's a longer process to get ISO. So it's a huge thing that we're starting to do with many benefits. What's different about it this year, though, is you do everything virtually. So you're eliminating a lot of the nuances that, when it comes to interviewing auditors, because for both of them, you need auditors. So we interviewed several auditors. Well, it's hard to kind of relate because most auditors want to take you to lunch, take you to dinner, try to get your business. So our interview process kind of eliminated some of that, but it was hard to tell, which auditor would really work well with you because you didn't have that interaction. So right now, as we go through this audit, the planning is the same, it's gathering the information and bringing everybody on board, right? So on a normal scenario, we can gather everybody into one room and say, hey, this is what we're going to do. Well, now we're virtual, right? So even having the people interact with the auditors in a way that they get the information, but they also understand the process. So now it's not only different for us, it's different for all of the auditors in the world. The good part is we eliminate the physical part of the security since we're not in the office right now. So, as that changes, auditors will change again and go back to normal. But we've had great auditors that we've chosen, and we just finished our internal audit so far as a part of the process. And I think it went pretty well because we got some great auditors who kind of kept people engaged as they went through the process. So while it's a lengthy process, it's well worth it in this virtual world to really do some interviewing first and really select an auditor that really understands the business and can really help you move forward.
For those who aren't familiar with ISO 27001 certification, or maybe SOC 2, what's involved in it? What's kind of the benefit to it?
Yeah, so for a SOC 2 Type 2, a lot of companies are doing the SOC 2 Type 2, and it's really about looking at your company's security controls, right? There's a list of controls that you put in place. But when it comes to the ISO is about having an information security management system. It's elevating it, right? So it's taking it to another level. It is an international standard, so it's widely accepted, where SOC 2, people like it because it's more detailed. But the ISO talks about the process. How do you implement security into your whole entire system? How do you go about doing it and gathering the evidence, proving that you go about doing it? How do you handle third-party supplier onboarding, right? How do you bring on your vendors? What does that process look like, right? And then kind of going through that entire process line with an auditor, and the auditor saying, yep, they do that, and then getting the certificate. And the certificate lasts a 3-year cycle, where SOC 2 is just for a period of time, like 6 months or 9 months. Where ISO is a 3-year cycle. Each year you kind of get recertified a little bit, but your 3rd year is the recertification. So they look at you every year and then the 3rd year. So it's more rigorous. That's why it takes a lot more work to get it, but you have to prove your processes and frameworks are in place in order to get the ISO. So that was a great question. So for companies, it's just about really showing that you're dedicated to security in a way that's a little more elevated than a SOC 2.
One of the reasons that ISO is a longer ranging certification is because you're not just showing evidence that you did something, but rather evidence that you have processes that enforce certain good behaviors, really, right?
That's right. Yeah. And it also shows really heavily that your management is behind what you're doing, right? It's because it's a management sign off. Their management says they support you. So it's really showing that your leadership supports you, that you do have the entire process in place to kind of get certified. That's exactly right, Brian.
In another company, that could be a really lengthy back and forth.
This is where the best friend meme gets inserted into the video.
Yeah, because we don't have to chase people down for evidence. You guys were right there with us. So that makes it really easy.
Yeah, and honestly, when I've done various types of audits before in the past at other companies I've worked at, the process of providing that evidence hasn't been as smooth. So it was really nice to be able to just go to the little portal that we had and just kind of upload screenshots and whatnot to it. So I really appreciated how easy that was.
Yeah. As a SaaS company, we chose auditors who interact with SaaS companies and had a SaaS tool for us to put our evidence in. So we wanted to kind of stay aligned with how we're doing things as the company. So
hashtag better audits. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Ife, for joining us today. We really appreciated having you on here and sharing your perspective. I'm really excited to see where we go next with the power of our 2 teams combined. This is where, Captain Planet comes in.
Yep.
And, thank you to Brian, as always. And thanks to everyone for tuning in. We will see you next time on the SaaS.
Thank you so much. Oh, remember, register for Altitude.
Yes, register for Altitude.
We almost forgot.
Got to plug it in. We don't get that sponsorship money.
I want my swag. You want your swag. Register for Altitude.
Register for Altitude.
Below.